Hello and welcome back to the Battery Podcast. I am still Aidan, and that is still Jack. And we got a guest coming at you in a short moment today. We've got Hutton from the Pro Lacrosse Talk Podcast. He is here to just talk about all news cannons, free agency, starting the draft, the Cannons Championship odds looking pretty good. Uh, and we hope you guys like it.
Yeah, that was a great conversation with Hutton. Uh, Super insightful, ton of fun. Think you guys
Yeah.
will really enjoy it.
Yeah, and great to talk about someone who knows definitely more about lacrosse than I do. Great way to learn and realize that I need to do more studying, need to watch more college lacrosse, need to refamiliarize myself with rosters before the draft. Well, free agency already started, but
Mm.
definitely before the season starts, got to know who's going where, and for how long. All right, so we'll bring you over to Hutton now. So we are here with Hutton Jackson, the host of the Lacrosse Talk Podcast, among other things. So Hutton, welcome to the show, and glad to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Exciting what you guys are doing, with the grassroots effort for the Boston Cannons, and excited to see what you guys end up doing and all the other supporter groups. So appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks. All right, so maybe if we could just get it started with what was your relationship, or what is your relationship to lacrosse? Where'd you grow? Like, did you grow up playing it? How'd you get into it? And any relationship with the PLL or MLL or Cannons?
Yeah, so started playing it when I was probably third or fourth grade. Kind of come from a lacrosse family. My dad grew up in Baltimore and played with all his brothers, so got a lot of uncles that played. Fell in love with the game pretty early on, and then decided to go try playing in college at DeSales University. Didn't play much, but I was on the team. And after I graduated, I really started to miss it. So I started looking for avenues to kind of write on lacrosse and kind of fill that void. Probably like 3 or 4 years after I graduated. It was 2016 when I graduated, so probably around 2017, 2018. Started writing a little bit for Fansided. Didn't have a lacrosse site, but I had reached out to them and they said, hey, like we don't have a site, but we'd be willing to, if you have lacrosse articles, we can put them up on the main site. It was buried, you had to I could only really just send the link to people, but they were up there. And then the PLO actually reached out to me about doing an article when they were starting their league. They wanted me to do a story on Paul, and I thought, wow, this is crazy. Like here I am just kind of writing, college recaps, and they want me to interview Paul Rabel. So that's when I started, like, when I got that interview, I was like, wow, I could kind of maybe, make some connections here, start my own thing. I had a friend, Adam Moore, who I started Pro Lacrosse Talk with, and we really envisioned it as like the source of pro lacrosse, and kind of it evolved into a podcast. And we did post like news articles. Started realizing though, like we probably couldn't keep up and do them as quickly as the leagues themselves. So we kind of tailored our approach to more just reacting to games, providing commentary. Kind of got into the betting space a little bit too, which is kind of where I ended up now, a full-time job. But that's kind of how I started, and we kind of approached it saying, hey, we're going to cover the PLO, we're going to cover the NLL, MLL at the time, and women's pro lacrosse. We wanted to cover all the pros, so it kind of served us well, when the MLL and PLL eventually merged, because we still had relationships with people that were playing in the MLL as well as those that are playing the PLL. And eventually, Adam ends up having, two kids now. So he's a full blown dad, coaches at Calvert Hall. He had to kind of take a step back a little bit. I had to take a step back too. So haven't really been putting out a lot of podcast episodes, but I still, try to stay up on, the
Mhm.
latest news. I work for a betting company, and even though I'm not an analyst, they let me provide articles, betting articles on betting. So very big into the PLO betting, which first came around in 2020, was one of the first things, you could legally bet lacrosse on. And then, eventually NLO and college lacrosse came too. But that's kind of how I get my fix these days. I still keep up with the league, but more from a betting lens.
All right. I think natural follow-up to that is, did you have a Cannons feature going for the Champ Series?
So yeah, I did actually. That was the only one I placed, and
Yeah.
it's funny the way I bet futures. Most of the time is I usually actually bet a couple. Sometimes like even the PLL, I'll bet like all but one. And
Yeah.
for me, it's like kind of treating it like a portfolio. You bet them, when their odds are long, and try to find value that way. With the Champ Series only being 4 teams, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna pick a team that I think can win. Just bet that, not try to hedge or do any of that. So bet the Cans. They happen to make it to the championship. decided not to hedge at that point too. The Water Dogs were favored, so it wasn't really, much that I could hedge anyway. Said I'd let it ride and was very happy to see them win in overtime.
Yeah, that was
Going off of that, then do you already got futures down for the coming series, or I haven't seen too many out there yet. So what are you thinking there?
Yeah, so BetMGM posted odds, and
Okay.
then took them down pretty quickly. I did bet the Archers, but more of just at the price. So,
Mhm.
it was plus 550, whereas Water Dogs and Cannons were favored at plus 400. And to
Okay.
me, that feels about right. So,
yeah,
I do think
Yeah.
the Cannons have a great shot at winning and probably even better shot now. I know we're getting into free agency. To me, I just saw the value on the defending champs and the Archers at plus 550. I don't know why they posted that. But
Yeah.
I feel like when these odds do come out on DraftKings, FanDuel, you're going to see probably the Cannons right up there with the Water Dogs and Archers being favored. So, hoping that they undervalue the Cannons a little bit because I've loved what they've been doing, and I do think they have a great shot of making it to the championship. But do anticipate them probably being in that 400 to 500 range along with the Water Dogs and Archers probably.
yeah, that sounds right to me.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think, well, certainly what we saw in the Champ Series was the two best teams making it to the championship game.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
going forward into the regular season, like, obviously don't want to sound like too much of a homer, but I really can't see the Cannons not being one of the top two teams. Obviously anything could happen, injuries, whatever. Um,
Mhm.
but man, these two teams look both of them look really, really good. And maybe that can transition our conversation into free agency. So the Cannons only have one move so far. I think the Water Dogs have signed Jake Richard, is their only move, but the Cannons adding
They
Epple.
extended Sours,
That's
uh,
right.
but in terms of bringing on new pieces, yeah, I think that
Yeah.
was it.
And no offense to Jake Richard, Epple probably a little bit more exciting for the team. So
Yeah.
I'll say it to both of you. What are your thoughts on Epple? What does he bring to the Cannons, and should they perhaps be the betting favorite when odds open, whenever that is?
Yeah, I really like what they did. And honestly, I think their biggest weakness was probably defense. That third pole,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Max Wayne, a lot of respect for him coming out of D3. He does deserve to play in pro lacrosse, but he got beat up a little bit, I think, towards the end of the season. And even Pulver too didn't look as great. Bringing Cade Van Raphorst, I think, was good for this defense. But I actually thought they fixed that third pole issue when they traded for Bryce Young. They make
yeah,
that move for Bryce Young. They bring in Connor Kirst, which I also love. Kind of give yourself a little bit more midfield depth from the offensive side, but he can also go both ways. So gives you another short stick, kind of like Bubba Fairman, who can kind of push and transition if they want to. Has that versatility. So I thought, oh, okay, this is great. They got a cover guy. They're kind of set. You got Keelty there. You got CVR. Ethan Raw, obviously, could have probably won Rookie of the Year. He was a godsend for them.
yeah,
And then they go out and they get the Defensive Player of the Year on Garrett Epple. And I think, that was a shock to me. I really didn't think he would go anywhere other than return to the Redwoods. And the fact that the Cannons got him kind of shows that, hey, they're going all in on the defensive end to kind of improve it. I know there were some conversations on Twitter like who's going to be their starting three. I think you start Epple, obviously. You bring
Yeah.
Bryce Young in to start, and I
yeah,
think Keelty is your other guy. He was
absolutely.
captain for them last year.
Agreed.
Kind of plays that Glazner, Bernhardt type of role where he's the off ball guy. He kind of started out as a rookie as the cover guy, but then when Brody Merrill retired, he stepped into kind of that role. And I think you utilize CVR maybe as an LSM along with Ethan Rawl or that fourth pole. So that's how I would approach it. Who knows? Maybe they do decide to keep CVR down at close and move Keelty around, or maybe they utilize Epple in a different capacity. But it's a good problem to have, right? To have this much defensive depth going from where they were kind of struggling to find that third pole really for their existence in the PLL. Finally found a little bit of stability last year, but now to going where you got the reigning defensive player of the year. Jack Keelty, who's looked great last year, and then Bryce Young, who's been a huge part of that Whip Snakes defense that's been so dominant for so long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think just I feel like after last year, the offense got so much attention just with all the additions that they made and like the subtraction of Lyle was a big talking point, but then bringing in Holman, Kavanaugh, and just like how good the offense was. I feel like that was the storyline of the Cannons, but the defense was solid last year too. Even more than solid. And yeah, exactly. I think adding the reigning defensive player of the year, it just is gonna really bolster that back line. And it's crazy because now it's like their defense is, I feel like, could be just as big of a storyline this year as their offense was last year.
No, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, totally. Plus, I mean, let's not forget about the great goaltending they have back there as well. That their first win of the season came when they switched to Colin Kurst. They rattled off what 6 or 7 in a row once Kurst settled in between the pipes. And I mean, obviously he gave up some goals and sixes as you're going to, but he was incredible at times, and I think that's just gonna continue, and he'll get even better in what is only his third year now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kind of going off this topic of everything that the Cannons have, I think the biggest glaring issue now is the face off. And so curious to hear your take, given the new rules. It seems like the Cannons might need a legitimate Fogo this year. So what do you think about the new face off?
Yeah, so not crazy about the rule change. I feel like you're not really fixing the issue of, I think what is too short of a shot clock, and I think there's a happy medium. I don't want to turn this into, a rule discussion, but I think the happy medium would have been maybe to just drop the shot clock down altogether to 45 or whatever, or maybe it's 45 after and then keeps it at 52, after a turnover. But the rule's the rule, and now that you can't have Ethan Raw taking those face-offs, I do think they'll maybe go out, and you got Stephen Kelly retired, so I do think you'll probably go out and try to get a face-off guy. I think that there's two routes you can take. I think they could go after maybe a Max Adler. I know he's taking off the NLL season, but I'm not sure if he's interested in returning for the PLL season after missing with chaos last year for most of the season, I believe. And they obviously found Rowlett to be their face-off guy, so I don't think necessarily Max goes back to that situation. I think he'd be the guy that I would target if he's going to play this summer. Connor Farrell also is a free agent, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Chrome don't bring him back, just because they do have Mike Messenger who can face off, and I think you're going to see, this is the other route maybe the Cannons could take. See teams that, okay, now you can't have a defender or a long stick take the face off, but can we throw a guy out there that can at least muck it up and still kind of provide that same concede and defend strategy that the Cannons and Water Dogs were implementing. Obviously, the Water Dogs can still do that with Zach Currier. I think the Chrome could do that with Mike Messenger. So maybe you see them actually target a guy that's not a face-off guy traditionally, but can do that. I mean, they did have Tim Edwards, I think, for a little bit a few years ago, and he kind of does that. He faces off in the NLL for the Mammoth. But he's also versatile. Like he can, push and transition, play, short stick defensive midi. So that's one route they could take as well. So I'm not really sure what they do, but if they are targeting a Fogo, those would be the two I go after. Or, maybe they give it, give Inacio a chance, or a guy like Zach Cole, who I think saw a little bit of a time with the Redwoods last year. He's been playing in the NLL for the Vegas Desert Dogs. So, he's been staying fresh. So they have a lot of options, which is a good problem to have. But I'm really not sure which route they go. I just think I don't think I would be shocked if they completely abandon what worked for them last year as far as the face-off, because really the only thing that's changed is now you can't have Ethan Raw take those draws. So if you can find a short stick defensive midi that's comfortable taking them, maybe it's already on their roster. You can still actually, try out that strategy and just have a pull at the, on the wings.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and oh my God, Jack and I were lucky enough to talk to Brian Holman for a few minutes at the Champ Series a couple weeks ago. And he said they were looking at a few different things, but I don't remember him mentioning looking for a Fogo. So I would be, I think, more inclined to think that they're going to send a short stick D midi out there, because then you also have the advantage of, you can send that guy out there on, other defensive possessions, which is, you see more similar in the NLL. I think Baptiste and Nardella will play regular defensive reps in the NLL. And I don't remember, but I swear I've seen either the Cannons or another team, you get that extra roster spot. Maybe some of the time they did 6 polls, or some of the time they, have that extra D midi in there. But
and maybe, what they could potentially do too, if they're looking for a guy that is like fits that mold a little bit more, like an Erlin or a Baptiste. Pete LaSala, I thought, did pretty well for the Whip Snakes. And now that Nardella is coming back, maybe they give Stags a call, and maybe it's another trade. We've already seen them make a trade before, and you kind of see that a lot in the PLL. You can kind of tell the the coaches that are kind of, making trades together. You see a lot with Redwoods Chaos, Whipsnakes Chrome for a little while. So maybe Holman, sends a defender to the Whipsnakes to add depth, after they already traded away Bryce Young, maybe Jake Pulver goes there, or, Craig Chick, just to give the Whipsnakes some depth. And then maybe they send Pete Lasala back. Or, maybe the Stags decides to keep, both those guys on the roster just for depth. But it wouldn't surprise me because we've seen Pete Lasala, obviously score goals on offense for UVA in the past. So he's not a traditional, face off, get off. He could, provide a little bit of a spark if they decide to go that route. But, again,
that is a great point, because much like Dylan Ward being the backup for Blaze Reardon the first year or two of the PLL, like Pete LaSalle, I think, is too good of a Fogo to be backing up Joe Nardella for a full
They're
season.
just not going to use a roster spot on him. He's going to be a scratch if they're only going to go with one Fogo, especially these days with the way the face-off rules are set up.
If for as many teams that decide to go with Fogos, I think LaSalle definitely deserves a roster spot. So that would be, that'd be interesting to see. It would be funny if Bryce Young just got traded right back, but I can't really see that happening.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that. But
maybe
one of the, I think Craig Chick could be. It's kind of up in the air with what Earhart does. So I know they already traded Matt Reese. So maybe Craig Chick's a guy, and I think maybe it's draft picks. And the thing is with trades is sometimes they're always going to kind of be a little bit lopsided just because there's only 8 teams. So maybe for Stags it doesn't need to be a premier defender, it just needs to be a body, and then he gets a draft pick in return, or it's just both kind of filling a need depth wise.
Yeah. Oh man, I would love to not have to worry about Michael Earhart anymore.
Oh, true. Speaking of the draft, though, do you think that that sort of face-off or D-mid role is something that the Cannons could look at in the draft? Or because it's just, I feel like this class is such a deep, offensively talented class that what do you think like would be the best strategy to go for, is just given how much sheer offensive talent there is available?
Yeah, it's tough to say what, because you feel like the Cannons are probably set kind of everywhere, but I feel like they have a lot of great shooters, and I think they could benefit from maybe another Dodger. Not to say that some of these guys, like Matt Campbell's obviously a great Dodger, Marcus Holman can dodge too, but a lot of these guys that they have on their roster, they predominantly, kind of spread the field, like Chris Eslanian and Marcus Holman. They got 2-point range. They kind of float around, and it's a very fluid offense, kind of driven by Asher Nolting. So I think adding another dodging threat from the midfield would probably be the biggest priority for them. Just a guy that can really, just win his one-on-one matchups and make people miss. I feel like that's the only thing they're kind of lacking right now. They got a lot of guys that thrive, finding space and being able to shoot from range. But can you find that guy that can get to the middle of the field, and then you might see Asher Nolting or Matt Cavanaugh, get more goals off of assists from that. Kind of finding a guy that can kind of maybe mirror Asher. If he's the quarterback at X, who's the guy from the midfield that can also quarterback, kind of like a Tom Schreiber. So that would be maybe like what I'm looking for. I think it's a good problem to have because they have a lot of guys that are obviously really talented. What they did last year worked for them, but that's probably what I would look for in the draft right away. Is just who can kind of be that guy. And then it's probably going to come in that first round, which, I think they pick sixth,
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Sixth.
it's a deep offensive class. So who falls to them, it might be interesting. Maybe if teams go need first as opposed to best player available, they might get lucky and get somebody to fall in their lap. Kind of like Campbell did, in the second round for them last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I so dream of Connor Schellenberger somehow getting to play midfield for the Cannons, but there's no chance that happens. He was,
I feel like he's probably going to be gone by then.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
he'll be 3 at worst. But yeah, he's just such a positionless. Like he can play anywhere in the offensive zone.
And Pat Cavanaugh is an interesting one because he might be gone too by the time 6 rolls around. But I think he's probably the third prospect behind Shelley and O'Neill. So there is a chance that some of these teams decide to focus more on the defensive end, or do the Redwoods take Entenmann now and goalie? Because I thought maybe the Atlas might target him. I think with them signing Troutner, that kind of maybe it doesn't necessarily rule that out, but there is a chance maybe I think that Pat Cavanaugh can fall to 6. I'd kind of be shocked, but like stranger things have happened, so he'd be a guy that you could really, obviously the chemistry with Matt would be great, but look at the Notre Dame offense, they play all over the field, like he's a lefty, but like he'll dodge up from the top of the right side of the box or whatever. He's one of those guys too that's just so positionless and can win his one-on-one matchups. He can be a finisher if they want to use him as that. He can be a dodger. It's like having two Kavanaughs out there is never a bad thing. So, does he fall to them at 6? I don't know. Maybe they make some moves to move up if they can, but he would be a great guy if they're able to somehow get him in the draft.
Yeah, and that would be just such a fun story all summer long, is the two Kavanaughs, the chemistry. Because I'm sure, I mean, the endless hours that the two of them must have played together in the backyard. To see that, like we saw with Mile and Lyles at Notre Dame.
Absolutely.
Lyles and Lyle, not at Notre Dame, at Albany.
Cannon's just all about reuniting the families. You got the Pullmans together now. Get the Kavanaughs together. Yeah. We got the Kirsts together.
Two of them. Yep.
Yeah. That's just all
that
we
might
do.
Be
is
a pro lacrosse record right there. Would that be four groups of brothers or four families? I guess.
Yeah. Three groups of brothers and then a father-son duo to top it off.
Yeah, let's see. That would be another fun episode for like next off season, is how many more sibling pairs can we acquire on the same
can we create?
Yeah.
It's
gonna be forever for all the Kirsts to be. They might be so far apart that I don't know all 5 Kirsts would ever be in the PLL at the same time, because I think the youngest is a senior in high school now. But
yes, that's still another 4 or 5 years away.
Yeah.
But isn't Colin the second oldest?
I think so.
Connor's the oldest. So it might happen, honestly.
Connor's only 25? So he'd probably be 30-ish by the time the
Okay, yeah, that's doable. Because I think
it's doable. Yeah.
Because Matt Cavanaugh is only he's 32 or so.
32 or something, and Pat's coming in this year.
Yeah.
So
there must have been there was Brendan Cavanaugh, right? Who also played in the MLL but didn't last as long.
There was.
Yeah, I think he was on the Chrome for 2020, but other than that, I don't know if he made a roster after.
Bring him back. He's the practice squad.
Yeah. But I think we talked a little bit. I can't remember if this was at the start of the show or if we talked about this before we started recording, but just about sort of the grassroots nature of our group, and getting these home city connections is so huge. And so I was curious to hear, what was your reaction to the home markets and sort of the way that the PLL is, I guess, easing their way into this by they're not going fully city based yet.
Yeah, I thought the markets they chose all made sense to me. There's a few curveballs. I Redwoods to California seemed like it was the perfect fit based on name, but I was still hesitant. Do they go back to California? Utah was really out of left field, I think, for the Archers, but it makes a lot of sense. So I think the markets that they chose have been great, and obviously Boston, that had to be minus 10,000 odds for them to go to Boston. If they went anywhere else, it's everyone would have been shocked. So obviously, I think them going back to Boston with the Cannons is great. And I really do like how they have it set up and easing their way back in, because you have seen with the MLL some markets struggle attendance wise. I think the way the PLL they've built their market or built their brand is more reliant on TV deal and getting it in front of as many people as possible through the TV, and then growing the grassroots organically over time. And I think that's been a good approach, because it's just hard to get people to go out to lacrosse games during the summer. People have kids that are playing in tournaments. People, are going to weddings, different functions. You got the beach. I remember, I think it was Nick Ocello said on a podcast that, the PLL is not competing with Major League Baseball. They're not competing with these other summer leagues. They're competing with the beach. They're competing with vacations, for people attention to get to games. So I think the idea of, having a homecoming weekend where you can see your favorite team in their home market play 2 games on the weekend is a great idea. And it's a great way to kind of organically start getting people interested. And I don't want to say I was surprised, but it was, pleasantly surprised to see how much assigning teams to a city has really like ignited people's interest that maybe weren't first interested in lacrosse. You had people that were loyal to the PLL that, obviously when they were assigned cities, they were happy, or maybe they were a little upset. They had to switch allegiances, but there's just so many people that I could see, especially like, groups like Boston, Philadelphia, like good sports cities that are like, oh, now we have a professional lacrosse team. Maybe they didn't know about the Cannons in the MLL and now they're just hearing about it. Or maybe if you're Philadelphia, you just hear that the Water Dogs are in town. So like I feel like great cities like Boston, Philadelphia, Maryland area now are really starting to embrace, okay, this is our team. Maybe you're a Whip Snakes fan because of the Maryland connections, but now it's a Maryland team. So I think it's great the way they're doing it, and excited to see how things turn out and how they utilize your guys' group, with like watch parties and having a section in the stadium. I think you guys were telling me, for the supporter group. So I just love that they're already thinking ahead about that stuff. So that way, when they do start to do more homecoming weekends and eventually have teams based in the city and you're playing home games, half your games are at home. You'll already have that support there.
Absolutely, yeah. Really interesting. And I'm curious though, obviously I think the huge glaring holes just with the markets that were passed over, whether it be the Midwest, Texas, Florida, do you think that they'll how soon do you think they'll try to expand to those areas?
Yeah, I think we're still probably 3-4 years away from expansion. I know that people don't want to necessarily hear that, especially if you're, from that market. But um, if you've seen the way the PLL has kind of operated, they've kind of had some form of expansion every year but it's in a different way. They added an expansion team with the Water Dogs. Then after that, they were just getting off of COVID, and then they had the Cannons, post merger. Or that I think that was after COVID. Yeah, post merger.
Yeah.
So that's 8 teams. And then they're introducing free agency and kind of like I don't want to say it's an expansion in that, right? But now adding cities, like it's not necessarily expansion where they're adding teams, but they're doing stuff like that. So I think actually you'll probably see more roster sizes get a little bit bigger, I would hope. So you're not
Mhm.
adding another you know 25-man team, but you're adding maybe 1 to 2 more roster spots that coaches have flexibility with, that more people can get paid and stuff. So I think that's what we'll see next. And then eventually, yeah, maybe we do see, 10 teams. And I do think, I think the Midwest is probably priority number 1 for them, whether it's like Minnesota or Ohio that, had a very loyal fan base with the machine. Like those probably are the 2 spots they're probably looking next.
Mhm.
And then I think it also comes down to, right now they're single entity, but the plan's got to be for them to eventually franchise. They'll probably, that probably is still like a ways away, but are there markets where we can tie, into an owner that also has ownership in, another franchise in another sport, maybe it's an MLS, and then, they
Mhm.
are able to rent that stadium or whatever. Or maybe it's, we saw it with the Outlaws attached to the Broncos with an
Yeah.
NFL team. I don't
Yep.
know if we'll see that again, at least anytime soon. But finding ownership groups that might be interested in, attaching their name to a pro field team eventually might also dictate where they go. And that's probably not always what people want to hear too, but that's kind of how money dictates where some of these teams go. So you always got to consider that. I think that's why Utah was kind of looked at. You have the budding lacrosse scene out there, but it seems like the Utah Jazz owner has an interest in pro lacrosse. So I don't think that was any I don't think that was a coincidence that they looked, to put a team out there as well. So
Right.
I do think, the Midwest is probably a priority for them, and
Mhm.
people probably hope that it was, a priority now as opposed to later. But um, they're still going to go back to those markets, for different weekends, not necessarily for homecoming weekends, but I think there's still an opportunity for fans to get out and show their support.
Yeah, I'm very glad they're still going back to Minnesota. That's one of their 2 like non-homecoming weekends. And then Louisville surprised me for the All-Star game. They've done that a couple
Mhm.
of years now. And that would be really, really cool if there could be a professional team. in Kentucky. Like such a, I mean, I would think they'd absolutely dominate that market because there's like a, minor league baseball is the only real, and of
Yeah.
course, like
I
college
mean,
football.
they're big. Yeah, college basketball is huge in
Oh yeah,
Louisville in terms of professional. I mean, I know you say like the PLL is competing against the beach in the summer, they're not competing against other sports in the summer, but when there's no sports in the summer in a city
yeah,
like Louisville, I feel like that still lends itself to being a place where, your only competition is the beach. You don't
yeah,
even have a baseball team to worry about.
Yeah, and then you can also focus on like they do a lot of great stuff with, the fan experience around games, whether it's like concerts and stuff. So, maybe that's where you try to tie in, something that might get interest. I mean, the 4th of July game in Denver for the
oh
fireworks was
yeah,
always huge. So like maybe you tie it in that way in order to get fans out to a local team in a market that's maybe, more non-traditional.
yeah,
Hmm.
great. I think that just about wraps it up here for us, as the clock is ticking. So. Hutton, this was great to talk to you. Hopefully we get to do it again soon. And let's go Cannons once those odds open up and starting what, May 31st. What part of Jersey are you in? Are you gonna be able to get out to Philly, you think?
Unfortunately, that weekend doesn't work for me. So I'm still looking at the schedule and kind of figure out where I'm gonna go. Maryland might be one that I hit up.
Hmm.
But yeah, still trying to
Fairfield?
figure that out. Yeah, Fairfield is another one that I think I might do too. So,
Nice.
don't mind traveling. I have a lot of family in the Baltimore area, so Maryland's
Ah,
definitely the
nice.
one that I'm kind of looking towards right now. I try to go to the championship every year. This year I might not be able to, unfortunately, but yeah, we're gonna try to get to at least one, and I'll always be watching on ESPN Plus if I'm not at the game.
Absolutely. As will
Awesome.
we all. And of course, you always have a seat at our watch party. If you're ever up in the
Appreciate it.
Boston
Yeah, maybe I
area.
just come up to Boston. If they're in like California or something, I'll come up to
Join,
Boston.
yeah.
Yeah, please do.
Historic city, spend the fourth in Boston. Come on.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Hutton, it was great to talk to you. Uh, any socials that you want or links will be in the description here, so people can check those out. And I think that's all, everybody. Yeah, have a good night.
Oh man, that was a good conversation. That I really enjoyed talking to Hutton there. He just knows his stuff. Like that
Yeah.
was just such a cool conversation to like pick his brain and hear kind of his take on everything. Like it was just, I feel like I love talking lacrosse. I love talking sports. And, don't have a lot of people that I get to just talk shop about lacrosse with. And it's like Hutton just looks like the perfect guy to just have a great lacrosse conversation with.
Yeah, I mean, someone who knows as much about not only the game, but like the league and the players as he does, like talking about all the Cannon's best options, the type of things they could do like defensively on the face-off, offensive pieces, like so like a treat, honestly, to talk to someone who knows the game that well,
Mhm.
and knows the league that well. I cannot wait to have him on again, especially once stuff starts happening as we get closer to the season, like once the draft happens or right before the draft. Going to be an amazing conversation to see. Um, what the Cannons are going to do, what the whole league's going to do.
Definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Would love to have him back on the pod.
Yeah. All right. So thank you all for listening. We are glad to have you here. Please check out Hutton at his links below, the Pro Lacrosse Talk website, their Twitter account, their socials, and Hutton's Twitter as well. You can find all our links in the description, our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Sign up form if you want to be notified when we are having our watch parties, get our um, special block party for the homecoming weekend, and any other events we're having in and around Boston or New England. Um, and until then, we will see you guys in the very near future.
Go
All
Cannons.
right. Yeah, go Cannons. All right. Night.